Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Soul Shook podcast. I'm Kimmy Malay, your host, and we're going to talk about settling. Are you settling? Have you been settling in your life? I wanted to talk about this because I feel that it is not spoken about enough, and that it's so easy to underestimate the ramifications of settling and the different ways that it shows up, the different covert ways that settling shows up in our lives that we just aren't aware of. So, in a way, I equate settling with laziness, because settling tends to happen to people who just let life happen to them instead of them happening to life. I'm going to share a story with you that's powerful about settling and the many different ways that I saved my own life because I didn't settle. So keep this in mind, and you're going to start to notice these little things day after day and catch yourself where maybe you might have settled before, but you're not going to do it anymore after this video, okay? So in 2008, I had stage 3 inflammatory breast cancer. I didn't know it. I knew something was wrong. I had a baby girl at the time I was nursing, and I was seeing this doctor, and he was convinced that I had mastitis. I was young. I was 30. He just thought, you're too young and healthy. You don't have any risk factors, so it's fine. It's probably just mastitis. And in fact, he wanted to lance it. So there's the first place where I saved my own life, is I fought back against that. I mean, can you imagine if he had lanced it? It could have spread cancer throughout my body. So that didn't sound right to me. I really wanted to investigate more. But I could have just settled, right? I could have just settled right there and said, he's the doctor, he knows better. I should just listen to him. But I didn't, because it's not who I am. And so you have to pay attention to your intuition. You need to be your own advocate. And I'm not just speaking in the realm of physical health. This applies to everything in your daily life and the things that you're trying to achieve. You cannot settle. You cannot take things at face value. So I'm going to continue my story, and then we're going to kind of come back to these points. So then there was the first place where I saved my own life. Yeah, no, how about we don't lance it? I really don't think that's a good idea. So I pushed for a mammogram, and he didn't want to do this. He thought I was, again, too young, didn't have the risk factors according to him, even though my grandmother had it at 30 years old, and I told him that. So instead of settling for his answer that I was too young and I didn't need a mammogram, I said, I don't feel comfortable with that answer. And in fact, now mind you, this was like probably my 6th visit to his office. So he had been treating me with antibiotics. And I said, at this point, I've had enough antibiotics to sink a ship. And I'm just not comfortable leaving this office without you writing me a script for a mammogram. And he did it. Hesitantly, he did it. But that also saved my life. So when I went for the mammogram, I had to wait for this appointment, weeks. And meanwhile, I did have, excuse me, I had this mass that was growing rapidly and had moved up to underneath my arm and was about the size of a golf ball. So I was in trouble. I knew something was really wrong and that it wasn't an infection. Excuse me, I have to get a drink of water. This is what happens when you make like 4 videos in a row. So I get to the appointment for the mammogram, and they say, oh, I'm sorry, ma'am, but you aren't on the schedule. Now, I've been waiting for this for weeks. I'm in really bad shape. I've been treated with antibiotics that aren't doing anything for me for months now. And I knew, something in me knew, this was my intuition that said, do not leave. So, I'm going into panic now, and I look at the woman and I say, this is important. I have to be seen today. I had to make arrangements to get a babysitter for my child, for me to be there at that appointment, and I just wasn't going to reschedule. They were saying it was like another 4 weeks out or something, and I knew that time was of the essence. So I didn't settle. I said, you see that chair over there? I'm going to go sit in that chair. And I don't care if it takes all day. Someone has to see me because something's wrong. And I'm pretty sure the woman thought that I was absolutely crazy. She probably questioned my sanity. And she didn't seem very pleased with my answer. I think she probably thought I would leave after an hour or so, but I didn't. I sat in that chair. I sat there all day. I fell asleep in that chair. And, every once in a while I'd kind of wake up and she'd be side-eyeing me, or I'd see her go in the back and talk to some people. But I wasn't going to leave. And near the end of the day, I knew, their office was getting ready to close, and she kind of came out and said, hey, I think you should go now. I'm sorry, no one can see you. And I said, okay, then I'll just close with you guys. I'll stay here till the last minute. And she finally got somebody to get me back there for an ultrasound. And she said, okay, we don't have time for the mammogram, but we have a nurse who can do a quick ultrasound if that's okay with you. I was like, great, wonderful, let's do it. Ultrasound. Anything that's going to get me any answers today, I'll settle for it. But I had to get the answers. Now, I know I just used the settle word, but can you imagine if I had settled and just left? Because I did have cancer, and they saw it that day. When I went back for the ultrasound, the nurse, I knew within minutes, she looked very disturbed. Her chin started quivering, and then she said, will you excuse me for a moment, please? And darted out of the room, and next thing I knew, a team of doctors and assistants came bursting through the room. And the doctor looked at me, and she held my hand. She was a radiologist, and she said, you knew, didn't you? And I just started sobbing, and I said, I knew something was wrong. Yeah. And she didn't have the concrete evidence that it was cancer, because, you need a biopsy for that. But she said, I've been doing this for a long time, and there's a very high probability it is. It looks like cancer, and it looks pretty severe. And but so the moral of the story is, there's so many times there that I could have settled. And I'm going to get to one more. The number of times that I saved my own life by not settling is crazy. Once my diagnosis was established and I began to work with a doctor, an oncologist, he essentially let me know that he wasn't very hopeful. He thought that the outlook was probably 6 months, but they were going to give it their best shot. His idea of his best shot was putting me on the most basic medication, chemo that there was, which didn't align with the type of cancer that I had. I knew that because I was doing the research. Because I don't settle. I'm not a settler. I don't take things at face value. And I recognize that even professionals make mistakes. So, this happens all the time. We have to be our own advocate. We have to do our own research. And so I knew, my intuition knew, that the chemo that I was on was wrong. But I continued to do it. I continued to follow the doctor's orders. So in a sense, I settled at first because I knew I was going to have to follow his protocol initially. But I asked for clinical trials. I was told that it was too advanced. We didn't have time for that. It wouldn't work. He couldn't find any. There were lots of excuses why I couldn't do clinical trials. Why couldn't I do this other type of chemo that I had done some research on, and I saw that other women who had the same type of cancer that I had were on an entirely different protocol. And when I asked him about that, his response was pretty disgusting, if you ask me. I still get a little bit fired up about it. He said Medicaid wouldn't pay for it. I had Medicaid at the time. I felt like I was being treated like a second-class citizen, and that just didn't ring true to me. I wanted to do the BRCA testing, the BRCA, which basically tests for a gene that predisposes you to certain things, and there were all sorts of things that I was interested in, and he just was only interested in the most basic, bare minimum care. Essentially, he was letting me die. He wouldn't look me in the eyes when I would talk to him. He just didn't offer me any hope whatsoever. And after finishing that initial round of chemo, when we did a scan, they said that, no surprise, my body had not responded well to the chemo. So me hugging in the toilet for 3 months didn't do anything, is what I heard. And at that moment, I knew if I stayed there, I was going to die. So I didn't settle. Even though I was told that I should get my affairs in order, even though I was told there wasn't much more they could do, I didn't settle. I understand that there's a time for everyone. Sometimes the best care in the world, and is not going to save us. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't advocate for ourselves and just become a victim of circumstance. So while my body was trying to die, when I had no energy, when I was so tired, I mustered up the energy to find a different doctor and just hoped and prayed that this was going to be it. And it was. He put me on an entirely different protocol, and I immediately started to respond. My point here is that if we make the assumption that all doctors are the same, especially if what you're facing is potentially life-threatening, it could cost you your life. You have to know that doctors are different and opinions vary, and so this applies in terms of the law too, right? Maybe you have a certain legal dispute or case that's going on. If you make the assumption that every lawyer is the same, it could cost you a lot. If you just make one phone call to one lawyer and call it good, no, you need to shop around. You need to do your research. If you're trying to buy a house, you need to shop around, do your research, call different lenders. Stop settling. Stop being lazy. Seriously, guys, you have to be willing to do the work for yourself, for you, for your future. And I just see this all too often. Someone reads an article and they call it good. Well, I read this thing, and so I know, this is the case because I read this thing. One source of information. And that's just so difficult for me because it's not how I operate. My modus operandus is get as much information as you can from as many different sources and make an informed decision. So do that with your doctors, do that with your lawyers, do that with your mortgage lenders, do that with your employment. Don't go to an interview and settle for a wage that's lower than you deserve. Muster up the courage to fight for yourself and fight for what you deserve. So what is your worth? And are you willing to settle for less? Because if you are, I can't really feel sorry for you. I mean, this is just laziness. We see it happen all the time. And another way that I see this come up, it just drives me crazy, is where I kind of feel like it's an excuse to be lazy. It's like people will do this thing where it's like, well, if it just happened, it's just meant to be. So whatever happens is meant to be. And it basically, in my opinion, is a way to relieve themselves of the responsibility of anything, of the chance that anything could go wrong. So by just leaving it up to the universe, and I'm all about the universe. I'm all about praying and watching for signs and following your intuition, and I'm a very spiritual person. However, there is a line. The universe, God, whatever you want to call it, is going to meet you halfway. It's going to meet you as far as you come. This is just my belief. I don't think that the universe is going to come to you and deliver everything you want on a silver platter without you doing any of the work. You have to meet the universe halfway. And this lines up with settling, because I see a lot of times something will happen that maybe wasn't ideal in somebody's life, where they could have made a different choice. They could have tried a different avenue. They could have gone a different way. But instead of recognizing that, they just say, oh, well, it was just meant to be. No, it wasn't meant to be. You didn't advocate for yourself. So we need ownership, responsibility, accountability, and to stop settling. Thank you for tuning in today. I hope you found this information valuable. I really hope that it serves you. Take those few seconds. Be courageous. Speak even though your voice is shaking. Deal with the anxiety. You'll calm down later, but you're going to be happy that you did it. Okay, guys? I know you can do this. I love you all. I appreciate your support, and I hope to continue to bring you valuable content. If you liked this episode, please press the like button, share, and subscribe. It means so much to me. Have a blessed day, and I will see you soon.